Well, friends, today we're going to be talking about money. We're going to be talking about that thing that stresses so many people out. But the good news is that it doesn't have to. There is help, there is hope, there is answers. So I'm going to introduce my friend, Dr. Angela Love, which I just love her name so much. I love her name. But Angela, welcome. And why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, Trisha. Thank you for having me on your podcast. I'm excited to talk with you today about the fun topic of finances. Like you said, I'm Dr. Angela Love. I have a doctorate in finance. I teach at Liberty University and Limestone University. I teach corporate finance, accounting, personal money skills. I do course creation. I do all sorts of things for those two universities. And I'm also an author. I have a couple of books out or a few books out, and I do financial coaching. And I also have a graduate certificate in financial psychology and behavioral finance. So that's a really big word. And that's like
Oh,
the thing coming down the pike, as far as like a new type of industry thing that's coming is talking to people about, the psychology of why we spend and why we can't do budgets and what in our personality and just in our behaviors that causes us to have causes us to have trouble with managing our finances.
oh, okay. Now we're gonna have to have an off radio talk about the psychology of why do I buy 5,000 books and then still buy more books, Angela, when I have so many books I can never read? You
That is
probably have
some
an answer to that.
I do.
Okay. Well, we'll have to have that off air talk because that's a serious mess. It's like, why are you buying more books? You haven't read all the books you have. I'm like, but this looks amazing. And I do read a lot of books, but not as many as I buy. Okay, we're not getting into the psychology today because we're gonna talk about Angela and not Trisha
Right.
at this day. So, I would love to hear just okay, first of all, I met you at, a conference in
Yes.
January, and then saw you again at a conference in March, and I've just been so fascinated because I think money teaching, or well, first of all, ourselves, but then our kids about money is so hard, and I was so excited, that you have a curriculum for that and monetary mindfulness. I'm gonna be doing it with my kids in the fall, and we're gonna
Yay.
because this is actually what they need to know. Like, we've been
Yes.
struggling through pre-algebra, but this is the stuff that they're actually gonna use in life. So this is gonna be our focus for sure in the fall, and I was so excited about, that, and we'll have links to her books and other things in the show notes, but I want to hear the story behind the story.
All
How
right.
did you get to the place where you're like, "This is what I wanna focus on. This is what I want to give my attention to." Take us back, Angela,
You
to
bet. So, one of the things that I talk about on my website and just when I meet with clients is I talk about your money story. And my money
Mhm.
story, our money stories start when we're very young. And my money story started with my mom. She was a single mom and didn't know who my dad was. And she had a mental illness, schizophrenia. And so she was on government assistance and that sort of thing. And so my first experience with money was just using food stamps and going to the little store on top of the hill and buying groceries and preparing my own meals. And I was about 6 or 7. And when I say prepare meals, we're talking like cereal and ice cream and a can of
Mm.
spam, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
And then as I got older, when I got into high school, I started working when I was in my sophomore year. I was 15 and a half, and I started working when I was a sophomore and worked my way up to then I started off as a telemarketer back in the day when that was okay to do that, call
Yeah.
people cold and try to sell them insurance. I think I lasted 2 weeks with that. I didn't really like getting hung up on and having
Mm.
people be mean to me. And so I went and worked at a fast food restaurant called Carl's Jr., which is on the West Coast. And I think they've slowly have gone throughout the United States now. And I worked my way up to being a assistant manager my senior year. And when I graduated high school, even though I had worked like 3.5 years or 2.5 years rather, in addition to, the babysitting jobs and stuff like that before you go out and get your quote real job. I didn't have any money to show for it. And then I got into college and I was struggling with money and I didn't know how to balance a checkbook and I didn't know how to write checks and I didn't know how to do any of that stuff. And I found myself in debt already and like when I was 20 and I was just kind of a mess. And I moved from California, Southern California to mid-Missouri. And when I was there, I just realized I had this debt and I wanted to go to college and I just was straddled with, not being able with this debt and not being able to take advantage of opportunities that I really wanted to. And I talked with a friend and they recommended Larry Burkett's book, one of his books, one of his earlier books. I can't remember the name of it, but it was basically how to create a budget and how to manage your money. And that's where I started. And that's where I very first learned how to create a budget, how to balance a checkbook, how to enter in the numbers into your check register and all that kind of stuff. And so that's where I started. That's like my background. And then slowly over time, like I've worked at a credit union and as a branch manager and a credit analyst. And I found in that there's a lot of people that were like me. And I thought it was just me. I thought I was the only weirdo out there and the only person who didn't know how to manage their money and didn't know how to, fill out a checkbook and or a check register and do all those things. And the interesting thing is I'm a math whiz. When you talk about struggling to teach your kids pre-algebra or algebra 1, I am really good at all of that, really super good. So it's not about not knowing how to do math and that sort of
That's
thing.
really
It's just
good.
a different skill set.
Yeah.
And so what I learned is there's a lot of people out there who don't know how to manage their money and they're struggling and they're have a lot of debt and maybe they've have collections or they've had to claim bankruptcy, but they want to learn. And I really just want to help people with learning, but I also want to help kids too, because I think if we start them young with understanding how to balance money, how to manage money properly, and that sort of thing, then they'll do better when they become adults.
So good. And I love that everyone has a money story. I love that everyone has a money story, and all as you're telling your story, I'm thinking of my story, and I'm sure all the listeners are thinking of our story. And there's things that we learn. I mean, I grew up going to yard sales with my mom, and we were in. I remember there's times we were on food stamps. My stepdad was a police officer. My mom was working waitress jobs or retail jobs. I mean, it never felt like there was enough. Okay, so going back to my book obsession, all I wanted was money to buy from the little scholastic pages of those books. Now I
Yes,
have
I remember
Amazon
those.
and one click. Okay, so I think I'm doing kind of my own psychology here, but we do have these stories, that we come and so suddenly John and I, have better paying jobs, but there was definite seasons, and we go in and out of those seasons where our spending gets way out of hand because we're not used to having money and we think like, "Oh, I have so much money." And then you're like,
Right,
"Wait, this other bill came up and our car broke down." And I think wherever we are, um, it is good to have skills and to have skill sets and to have plans. Like just this year, I've lost weight. I've lost almost 90 pounds, and it came to building habits,
yep,
right? Healthy habits. And I think we could have that with our finances too. And often people don't know where to even start. Okay, so let's talk about this. Like when someone comes to you, I'm sure you talk about their money story, but where do they even start to figure out where to go? Because maybe they're way in debt. Maybe they're not even very much in debt. They just don't have a plan, or maybe they have
right,
goals and they don't know how to get there.
right. What I do is I actually have a questionnaire that I have them fill out, and it asks all sorts of questions. It asks, like, how much debt you have, what kind of debt you have, what your income is, and what your expenses are like. I also ask when it comes to I have them create a money plan that's based on how their income and, spending is, just like a real basic one. I don't have them get real in depth with that. And then, I have them look at, are you using your credit cards as a source of cash to pay for living expenses every month. And so that goes, a lot of people ignore that. Like they
Mhm.
make a money plan and they say, here's my budget, but they don't include all the charges they're making on their credit card. And you get into this kind of cycle of using your credit card to pay for living expenses, and then you have to make that monthly payment, the minimum payment, that sort of thing, and then you're still using it. So even though you made the monthly payment, you're still charging on it, and so it feels like you can't get anywhere. So where I have them start is just, let's look at what's going on with your finances. And I also have them write down like what their investments are, if they have any of those, retirement plans through work, any savings, all those types of things. And then I have them pick 3 goals. What are your top 3 goals that you want to accomplish with working with me, or just with your finances in general? And then I also have them look at what their biggest financial fear is. What is your biggest money fear? And what would happen if that came true? And then, talk with them through that. So first we just look at everything and see where stuff is at. And then once we do that, I have them go through and look at where they want to be. And then I have them choose how they're going to adjust their money their money plan, monthly budget. I like to call it a money plan, but how they're going to adjust their money plan from month to month. And I think one thing that a lot of people struggle with is they create a budget or a money plan, they start it, they get 2 or 3 months into it, realize it doesn't work, and they just stop.
Mhm.
But you don't need to stop. All you need to do is just go back to it and say, "Okay, what's not working and why?" and make adjustments to it. And then try it out for 2 or 3 months and see what's not working or what is working, and you keep tweaking it until you get to a point of, "This is working for us."
Yeah, what I love that you're saying too is, okay, you talk about someone, people often have a money plan and it doesn't work and they stop, but often they get that plan from someone else. Like it's
Right.
in a book or it's in a worksheet. I love how you talk about, you're talking with them and they figure out what are their goals? What are their fears? And then you're going to work it around what is interesting to them, what they can see and visualize for themselves, instead of opening a book that has this plan that someone else did that might not even fit them at all, and then they think,
Right.
"I can't do this." And so it just
Right.
reminds me of curriculum, homeschool curriculum, because when I speak at conferences, I love to get one of the early sessions because I'm like, "You're gonna walk through the exhibit hall tonight when the doors open. You're gonna see so much curriculum, and it's gonna have great books. It's gonna have great ideas." I'm like, but that curriculum guide, because I've written curriculum guides for people before, is someone, they reach out to a writer. They say, we need 3 discussion questions. We need 10 questions for this. We need this. And some writer, I didn't even do the curriculum that I wrote with my kids, right? Some writer is getting paid to
Right.
create something that can be used in a home. No one is actually using that from experience, or maybe one person did it and it worked for their experience, but I'm like, go in there. If you try something and it doesn't work, just try something else or make it work for you. Don't feel like you're a failure because you're what is some random person wrote in a plan doesn't work for your family. And so it's kind of
Absolutely.
the same thing. I think so many times we have the experts, but really we are the experts at what we know we do, what our priorities are. Some families, their priorities are love their kids in all the sports. They're gonna travel. They're gonna do those things because they feel this is super important to them. Some, all their kids have music lessons or whatever it is, whatever your family, their goals are. We love traveling as a family. So
Mhm.
throwing down, a couple $100 for a hotel room is important to us because it's the experience and it's that time together, which someone else is like, I will never have $400 a month for hotel rooms or whatever, because it's
Right.
individually. So let's talk about that a little bit. I think many times we think that we're a failure. Okay, I guess we're getting into psychology, Angela. We think
Again.
we're a failure because someone else's plan didn't work for us.
So one thing that there's a couple things you said that really stuck out to me. The first one was, somebody created, you get this plan of discussion questions. So one thing that's interesting about that is, I create courses for Limestone, and I've also redeveloped courses for Liberty. And
Mhm,
when I'm creating those courses, I'm putting in those discussion questions. And what
mhm,
I'm doing is just going in and going, this topic was important to me. when I
Mhm.
was learning about this particular subject. And so that's the discussion question I put in there and one that I think would be helpful. But there's like 20 other ones that I could put
Yeah,
in there that are just as helpful.
yeah, yeah,
And that question may relate to, it may click with one of the students, but another student may be like, "Oh, I already know all about this particular topic." And it may not have the same type of impact or benefit to them.
mhm.
So when it comes to pre-made curriculum or pre-made budget or something like that, it's more like a guide.
Right, exactly,
And
and I think people
yeah,
don't realize that, and, like, I'm not saying anything bad about that. It's like you see it and you say, "Oh, this is useful for me in these areas,"
right.
and maybe it's just teaching, like, maybe you don't know anything about this area and it's all gonna, like, open your awareness to it, but often I think so many times, and maybe it's just me and other people like me, you're thinking like, "I am a failure personally if I this cannot do this exactly like it says."
Right, and you're not, and the thing with pre-made budgets, or I like to call them cookie cutter budgets, it's where you have all the different categories and it has the percentages for you in whatever, areas, and here's a good example between you and I. I am now an empty nester, and so it's just my husband and I at home, and we only have 2 mouths to feed. You still have kids at home. How many do you have at home
4.
currently? 4, and then you have
But
other
then we
family
have
members.
my grandma, my mom's over often for meals. My second oldest son is over all the time for meals. Then they bring their friends. So I
So
usually
that's
cook for like
10
8 or 9. Yeah.
minimum.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you've got 10 mouths. So the money that I spend on food is gonna be much less than the money that you spend on food. And then the other thing you mentioned is that you do a lot of road trips because you do a lot of homeschool conferences and other types of conferences and other types of things that you're doing with your family. And my husband and I would go on road trips, but not near the same amount that you do. And so we have less, expenses for that, and you have more. And then on the flip side, we have a farm. My husband and I have a farm. And so we have a lot of expenses that go along with having a big farm. And well, big to us, it's small in Texas, but big to
Right.
us. And, so we have a lot of expenses with that. And you don't have a farm. And so you don't have any expenses for that type of thing. And so you really have to look at what is your lifestyle and
Mhm.
what's going on with us. And, do you have dietary needs? Do you have certain hobbies that you really want to enjoy? Do you have a farm? Do you not have a farm? Do you live in the city where there's easy transportation and you can take that instead, like the subway or bus or something like that versus a car? Is that like a common thing? So you really have to look at what is going on in your life and make your budget according to that rather than looking at something that's already pre-made and then feeling like I have to try to fit everything into these categories. And I guess we're going to have to cut down on our food costs because, this says only do this percentage, but we have 10 people in our family or we have 6 people in our family and I can't make it. So I guess we're just going to eat popcorn and beans,
Yeah.
for the month. And you really just need to figure out what works for you. And I think that people who create budgets or anything, business plan, whatever it is, when you're the one that's involved with that and you're the one that's creating it, you're more likely going to follow it versus if you're trying to follow something that someone else created for you.
Yeah, it's so good, and then going back to the part we personalize that because we have a problem. We
Right.
are can't do things. We are undisciplined. We are no, you just have different goals. You just have a
Different
different
goals.
lifestyle. Yeah.
And until you start tweaking, working with your money plan and you start tweaking it and really paying attention to it and seeing what's working and what's not working, you don't really know, and so you could feel like a failure when you're not. You're kinda guessing initially, guessing at, "Okay, this is what we think we wanna do," but until you start living it, living your money plan, you don't know if that really works for you or not, and you're not a failure if it doesn't work if one aspect of it doesn't work, it's just you're learning who you are as a family and what you need to do with your money plan in order to get it to work for you.
Mhm. I love that, and then, we go back to it all wraps around to our stories, like, we have the chance to write a different story for ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. I think, I'm not going against anyone in my family, but so many of my family are still where we were long ago. getting public assistance, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's there for a reason. People need it for a season. But it has become a lifestyle with many family members because they just can't see a different story for themselves.
Right.
And thankfully, John believed in my dreams. I believed in his dreams. He went to college. He supported me when we had nothing. And saved up babysitting money to go to my first writers conference. Like, saved up
Wow.
money for a year and went to my first writers conference and felt like this is my people and I want to do this. And, we had the computer with the floppy drive, saving stuff on it. I mean, it was just like back in the day, but we dreamed and we believed something different and we saw beyond. And so I think any place that you are right now, I just want to encourage people. You might be like, oh, it's so easy for them to talk about because they're not this much in debt or they don't have this type of situation. Let's talk about that a little bit because I think sometimes we feel like we are stuck and we just have to stay in one place when we can rewrite our story.
You can, absolutely. I rewrote my story, and one thing you said is the comparison, and my husband has this saying, he says, "Anytime you compare yourself to someone else, both people are losing
Mm.
because they're a different person, they're in a different place, they have a different they have different life experiences, all those things." So,
Right.
first I would say don't compare yourself to anyone else, just look at you and what's going on with your life. And the next thing is that you can change your money story. So I came from poverty, and then I was put into an adopted family when I was 12. And then um, or I was adopted when I was 12. I was put in the family when I was 9 years old. And then, I didn't have any money. When my husband and I got married, we had no money. We're like you and John. We just
Yeah.
didn't have any money and super poor and all of that. But, we decided we wanted to change the way we, dealt with money and what our life looked like. And it took a long time. I mean, we've gotten into debt and we've had to do consolidation loans and we've had to get ourselves out of debt. And it's been a cycle sometimes. You get yourself out of debt and then you go back into debt and you get
Mm.
yourself out of debt. And so it has been a journey. But one thing that I've learned is that you don't have to be stuck and you don't have to continue on the same path that you're on if you don't want to. You can change your money story, but it takes intentionality and it takes a willingness to learn. And there's a lot of resources out there. And sometimes, if you're like me, I can sometimes get stuck on information and not know how to apply it to my life. I go, okay, I understand that, but what do I do with that? And it's okay to reach out to someone and ask them, show me how to actually apply this to my life. This is what I want to do. And so don't be afraid to ask for help, but don't be afraid to say, I want to change my money story. I
Mhm.
want to change my experiences and I want to go from this to that and then figure out how to do that.
Yeah, and I really years ago I helped start a crisis pregnancy center, and we're looking at the budget, and we're like, we have so much that we want to do, and we needed to go to training. And one of the guys on our board, he was a very well off businessman that helped us a lot. He's like, training will always pay off, or any type of coaching, getting the information that you need will pay off because then you know how to do things better, your programs will work better and everything. So, and that has helped me. So, anytime I've hired a life coach, or I mean, just this conversation with you has benefited me. So, thank you, Angela.
You're
But
welcome.
anytime we invest in curriculum or like, to work with our kids, like this kind of stuff is something that will pay off, and will benefit us. And just having conversations with someone like you, is super helpful to get us to see things differently and maybe something we haven't thought about before, or to try something different. It's such a benefit. And so I think so many times when you feel stuck, it is going to be a little bit of investment to reach out or to buy a book or to get a curriculum and work through it with your kids, which you're going to learn as you're going through it. I'm super excited
Right.
about that too. That investment is worth it if you want to change your story, because we need to do something different than what we've been doing before, and it helps other people who are knowledgeable in those areas to step in and show us things that we can do differently.
Right. And, you said try something different. It's kind of like food, when you try something for the first time and you may love it and you go, okay, this is great. And it's the same thing with, your money. Try something different and you may love it. It may work out great. But then there's some foods we eat and we're like, oh no, I don't know why I put that in my mouth. That is awful. I never want to eat that again. And it's the same with your money plan. Try something. And if you're just like, oh, that was just the worst decision, I never want to do it again, then you have that knowledge in your pocket and you know, okay, that's not going to work for us. And you just keep trying different things until you find those things that work for you.
Yeah, so good. And the fun thing is that, often you and your spouse have different ideas.
Yes.
So really the first step of the plan is coming to an agreement. And it's so funny because I am more emotional about stuff. This is probably into the psychology again. And he's
Mm.
very rational. And so we had this big 12-passenger van, and I love the van. It has so many memories, family memories. We don't need a 12-passenger van. We only have 3 kids under the age of 18 in the house, right? So it's been sitting in our driveway for like 2 years. John's like, I think we need to get rid of the van. He takes it in to see what we can get for it because a dealership was interested. And then all of a sudden, in one day, he's buying a different car. And I'm like, "I trust your decision." I was so emotional. He brought home this other car, and I'm like, "I wouldn't drive it for 2 weeks." He's like, "It has four-wheel drive." He was like, "Show tell me all the rational benefits of why a better gas mileage, the insurance is less, it has heated seats." Like, he's naming all this stuff. He's like, "I did this for you." And I'm like, "I know, but I, like, missed the van." And after 2 weeks, I drove the car. I was very happy. And I knew so I think we had to get to the point also, I know after being married 34 years that he makes very wise decisions that I have to trust, and he knows that I had just to be mopey for 2 weeks and not drive the it was in 2018, it's not even a new car because we don't buy new cars, but anyway, all that
Right.
to say, like,
Which there's a
um
money tip for you right
yeah,
there.
exactly. So, it was new to us. I didn't drive it for 2 weeks, and he knew it was gonna be okay, I can be emotional, and that I usually come around, and so that's just an example of but it's taken us we've been married 34 years to get to that place where we can, like, "Okay," and I told him, like, "I'm really sad right now, but I trust your decision." And he's like, "I know you're really sad right now, and when you're ready, I'll show you your car." Thank you.
You're
And
like,
now I
nothing
love
can replace the
I
family
know.
van.
And
Yeah.
now I love it. Now I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I don't want the big van anymore. This car is awesome. It has a sunroof." I was, like,
Oh,
driving around
nice.
today. I'm, like, enjoying my little sunroof, but it's so funny how different people are and how just even how we handle situations like that really, it's different for everybody.
It is. I mean, we all not only do we have different money stories that we bring into our marriage, we also have different personalities and we have different experiences. And all those things wrapped up together impact how we relate to money and our money decisions, and then how we relate to each other. And it's interesting when I did a marriage class at church recently, and I do this with my clients too, with couples. But in the marriage class, it was a lot of fun to see the differences between all the couples. But I had them create a vision board, but I had them do it separate. The wife and the husband, they did it separately. So they
Oh
each
my
did
gosh.
a financial vision board. So, and then I had them, once they completed their financial vision board, I had them come together and then share their vision boards with each other to see how different or alike they were. And it was kind of eye opening for them to see there were some things that they were on the same page about, and some things where they were just complete, like, opposites, or they just didn't know the other person was thinking those things. And my husband and I did it too, and he was just like, "It's interesting that I went for all the things that were safety related, that made me feel secure and safe, and he went for all the things that were, like, project related,
Mhm.
things that had to be fixed."
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it's very, but that has to do with our personalities, and it has to do with our experiences, and, just, our responsibility, our roles in our marriage too. I'm a female and I tend to gravitate towards, wanting to feel safe and secure like most women, and he's the husband and he gravitates towards the need to provide or to get things fixed so that everything is functioning properly. And so it not only goes into that, personality, but just our roles in our marriage as well.
So good. Okay, even as you're talking that, so my vision board. Okay, I talked about the large van because it's all the family memories. And when my daughter comes from Europe and my grandkids are here, we get in one vehicle, have these family experiences. We've got on road
Right?
trips in the big van. The things that popped in my mind with my vision board was first of all, like going to travel and see my daughter more, who's in the Czech Republic, which we don't get to do that often. So more money for that. And then just last night, I've been talking with my teen daughters who are 14 and 16, and they're like, wouldn't it be fun to open a boutique? And then, and for me, I'm like thinking homeschool mom, like, oh, this is training. They would love it. Setting up a shop, maybe we could do pop-up shops. Like I'm already thinking like, oh, this would be a great project. So we're talking about this, like we've been talking about doing a boutique and wouldn't this be fun? And where would we put it? And downtown Benton is like an old part of town. And so, and my husband's eyes, and he's like, do you know how much it costs to do that? And then there's the permits. And like, he's like, and I'm like, honey, I'm like, we are just like, this is dreaming level now, where he's like, you were talking like location. And I'm like, no, we're like, they're 14 and 16. And because you have so much going on. I'm like, I'm not going to go open a boutique next week. I promise you I'm not.
You were
But
just dreaming.
I was just dreaming, and that would be like, so when you're talking vision board, it would be like travel to see family, and with my daughters doing some type of business to help them be able to, because they're struggling learners also, with
Sure.
dyslexia and different things. So I'm like, oh, this is great because it's a hands-on learning. And so I'm thinking homeschool mom, educator, again, family training, and I'm sure his is going to be like, because we're going to do this, his is gonna be this much money more in the 401k, getting our house completely paid off, getting he's gonna be like all provision and safety and all that sort of
Right?
stuff, completely different.
But I have different categories on there. So one of them is vacations and trips and that
Mm.
sort of thing. So even men or women who are like, "Oh, I'm looking at, like investments, that sort of thing," they still have to go over and they have to click
Ooh.
on, they have to put something in the vacation spot. And then there's the one as far as how your money aligns, like with your relationship with the Lord too.
Oh,
So there's different categories. And it's on my website. It's free, so you can download it and do it with your spouse, and it's a lot of fun. And you can use the PDF that I have on there to do it, or you can go all out and you can get a big old poster, those poster boards at Walmart, and do a collage and do all that kind of thing. However
it
you
would
want
be
to do
fun
it.
to do with
But
our kids too.
yes. Yeah, get them on board, because I think a lot of times kids don't realize the cost of things, and they also forget about some of the other things like, well, what does God want us to do, as a family? What is his plan? What is our purpose, and according to him? And we sometimes forget that part.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Okay, so many things. We could talk all day, and that's why I just enjoy you so much. Okay, so
Thank
where
you.
can people go? We're talking about the PDFs and all the things you have. Where can they go to connect with you and to find more information on all this?
So you can go to AngelaKayeLove.com, and it doesn't matter if you use the K, the initial, or KAY or KAYE, but it's just AngelaKayeLove.com. And on the main page there, if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see 6 different areas where you can do your money personality, and you can do a financial vision board. There's also information on how to work through conflict over money, and all sorts of, there's 6 tools there that are really, really helpful. And then if you're interested in getting my weekly email, where I always have some sort of tool or a tip or information. One week I um, gave out meal planning for teens. I gave that as part of my email newsletter that I sent out. So you can sign up for that. And when you sign up for that, you get 10 questions that you can ask your spouse to understand their money personality better. And just there's all sorts of resources on there.
I said when we started, like, this is a scary topic, and no, this was actually really fun. I'm
Yeah,
super
it is.
excited
It's
to go through.
fun.
So that's a great thing to go from like, oh, I don't want to talk about money to like, oh, wait, this could be fun. We could really enjoy talking about money. So yeah, thank you for that. But Angela,
You're
thank you
welcome.
for being here and all that you do.
Thank you for having me. It was great to talk with you.